Hey Brett, good afternoon. How are you?
Good, Richard. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking time to speak with me today. For the sake of our audience, can you please introduce yourself, your name and your role, please?
Yes, my name is Brett Chappell, and I am the Chief Talent Officer for Seton Education Partners, primarily working on the Bria Briante initiatives, public charter school initiatives. Yeah.
Nice. And you have been in the world of HR and talent management for quite some time. But before that, you were or you are a veteran, and you served our country for 8 years in the Navy SEAL. Talk to me a little bit about what brought you from the Navy SEAL to education.
Yeah, no, I that definitely seems like quite a change in career paths, I'm sure. But believe it or not, there's other team guys that have chosen the path of education, which is pretty awesome. We've crossed paths and communicated. But I think in the end, I was after being in the private sector, after serving in the military, I was really just looking for something more, and I wasn't sure what it was.
Mhm.
I thought maybe I was just missing jumping out of planes and shooting guns and blowing stuff up. But what I found with education and is that there's a lot of similarities, especially in mindset, from what I found in the teams. And I'll give you an example. One of the phrases we always use, and I know it's other folks use it too, but failure is not an option.
Yeah.
And in the teams, it's aligned to the work that we do, and we cannot fail because it's life or death. But what I found when I entered into the education space is there's a very similar mindset. We make promises to students, families, communities, and if we fail, we're failing families' outcomes and just the possibilities of what could happen if you have a great education. So yeah.
And this idea of not being able to fail, of course, comes with a level of focus and determination and discipline. How have you brought that over into this work?
Yeah. So another thing that's very similar is, in the military, we backward planned and backward engineered everything down to the finest detail, multiple contingency plans,
Mhm.
because we realized that nothing was ever going to go as planned. And I think I found that out my first day and every day in the classroom, that no matter how great of a smartboard presentation I had together, what a great lesson plan, things happen, fire alarms happen, lockdowns, just crazy stuff happens. So you really have to be prepared. Um, but like Buds trained, like the basic underwater demolition SEAL training trained you to, the reason it's so physically and mentally challenging is you're basically getting screened to ensure that under high stress situations, that you can stay calm under pressure,
Mhm.
and that it's not going to stop you from being innovative and improvising, because oftentimes we have to,
Mhm.
and then just constantly leaning on your teammates and the protocols, procedures that you have. So I think a lot of just that approach has been helpful.
Yeah. And this idea of being prepared for anything, I mean, you have led through the upheaval that is COVID-19 and the impact it's had on schools and our communities. And you've been able to lead really thoughtfully through that time. And so I'm wondering, through this great resignation, if you will, you've remained successful. How have you done that? And what advice do you have for others who are sort of navigating that space right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm a couple things. Is one is I'm really fortunate to have stepped into an organization that is very intentional around candidate and employee experience. Listen, nobody has the exact answers, but we truly, from the minute we engage with somebody, we value their dignity, and we are constantly aligning ourselves from the very first moment that we engage with somebody. Every single step, every strategic interaction that we have, is an interaction with our brand, and so we want to give them the most incredible experience as they go through the process, a dignified experience, one that's challenging, but at the same time, give them some insight into who we are as an organization. And then the tough thing is on the backside, what we promise and what we deliver in our prospect candidate journey is are they getting that when they onboard with us, and do they get that as they continue on with their learning and development? Um, and their mobility pathways, et cetera. So
Yeah.
we've leaned heavily on employee engagement surveys, interview surveys, and we don't want to survey people to death, but we want to make sure all across the continuum that those experiences and the interaction with our brand are aligned and they're as amazing as we can possibly make them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what advice would you have for school leaders who, right, so you and your team do the heroic work of sourcing the candidates and interviewing them and making them feel like part of the sort of community through their onboarding experiences, and then they go off to schools, right? And so, what advice do you have for school leaders to be able to continue that work once the candidates are in front of students?
Yeah, I think it's really an ongoing process, right? um, we want there to be a reason for people to want to be a BRIA. We want to be the best place to work in America, not just in education. And so, in order to see and feel that come to fruition, it has to be a very intentional experience, and people have to be bought into that piece. And then you have to monitor it. And I've been in a lot of organizations that talk about we're a feedback driven organization, et cetera. But we're all about getting feedback from people that don't have to say their name. We want to know what people are thinking across the entire continuum. So that looks like everything from our diversity, equity, inclusion strategies to our mobility pathway strategies, our master teacher program. All those things I think are so valuable, and we can't rest on our laurels and think, oh, we've got this. We have to constantly improvise and improve our brand. Yeah.
Yeah. And how have you guys been able to balance this idea of continuing to improve your brand, making sure that everyone feels like there is a space for them and that they're heard, while also making sure that the important work of schooling and teaching and learning gets done, right? Because sometimes people feel that there's a tension between making sure that my adults and sort of my organizational culture is high and healthy with being able to deliver for families and for their and for students. So what advice do you have to juggle both?
I'll tell you what, that's like the secret, right? Because but what I'm seeing and what I've experienced is when adults and their mental health and their engagement are in alignment and high, that those other things take care of themselves. I mean, there's even lots of research around employee engagement and productivity and innovation, et cetera. Sometimes we're so short-sighted that we just sit there and focus nothing except for academic results, to the detriment of our staff, to our brand. And then long-term, we run into other challenges and issues like retention and just having experienced people in the buildings that are just great teachers. So.
Yeah. And so what mindsets or resources have been crucial for you during this time?
Mindsets and resources. So I just finished up a master's degree at Columbia, and that was awesome. It was in human capital management.
Uh,
That was a huge resource for me. There was a couple things that I got from that. One is it was just an amazing faculty. It was scaffolded in the right way. We had tons of case studies, so we got to test drive new technologies and new ideas, but also really learn what return on investment is and what the finance piece of any kind of intervention looks like, and are you getting a return on it that's worth the investment. So just a lot of that coursework, et cetera, has really pushed my thinking. And fortunately, like I said, I have a leadership team that is so committed to our employees and the employee experience, that we've been able to consistently visit all these areas, especially when it comes to engagement and where are we falling short, where are we winning, and then let's find interventions and work with our principals and decentralize command and allow them to kind of lead and tell us what they need to help improve these metrics and areas. And I think that's been very helpful, giving them some space to, yeah.
Yeah. And you touched on this a bit, excuse me, but how can organizations be even more intentional with employee engagement Because oftentimes it looks, first of all, it looks different ways at different places, right? I think we all can appreciate that, right? You mentioned surveying as one tool with which you're able to do that, but what else can people do to ensure that they have their finger on the pulse, so to speak, of how their employees at large are feeling and what they need in order to deliver that for them so they can do their best jobs. Sorry, so they can be their best selves, excuse me, at their jobs.
Yeah, so there's a lot of strategies that we use, obviously, and I think most places do, but we do very intentional exit interviews that are not just a form someone fills out that we talk to them. We do commitment interviews. So I get a list of people from all the different schools at the beginning of the year, of people that have renewed their contracts, that I visit with and get feedback from them. We get the exit interview feedback. And then, when I say the engage, we use the Gallup Q12, and one of the pieces that it's anonymous, but the other is it compares us to our peer group.
Mhm.
So not all K-12 schools, but nonprofits with similar employee size. And we were like, our engagement score was 3.92 or 91 out of 5. So we're right at a 4 out of 5. So we might have thought that was great if we were just internally surveying and keeping that. But in reality, that we have a goal of being in the 75th percentile when it comes to engagement, and we're not there. So even though that isn't horrible, we still want to have a more engaged workforce than our peers. So that's one piece.
And my final question. So you mentioned that you just finished a program. So congratulations. What learnings can you share with us that we all need to be paying attention to as we continue our work, whether it be in recruitment and talent or as school leaders?
Yeah. Boy, there were some really impactful courses. I took a course called Strategic Workforce Planning that really taught us how to narrow down which specific roles that you need to have a long-term strategy around, because we can buy talent, right? We can go out and poach other organizations and get their top talent and pay them more and get them to our organization, but that's not going to keep them. And then there's just, that's just a finite number, right? I look at New York City and how many middle school math teachers there are, and it's just a finite number. You can only reach out and connect with so many of them. At some point in time, we have to take the responsibility to build our folks, and to put in systems and recognition, rewards, as well as financial supports to ensure that if we need a certain number of SPED teachers, that we have multiple strategies to accomplish that goal, and not just get on LinkedIn and source candidates and try to compel them to join our organization for a commute or an extra dollar or whatever that might be.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sure that many leaders across the nation can take what you've said as it relates to HR and talent and apply that with teachers and students in their schools. So thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Of course.
Appreciate it.